Hey, my name's Garrett Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and I run a small guest ranch just outside Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Now, before you get any fancy ideas, this isn't one of those luxury operations you see on Instagram with hot stone massages and five-star chefs. This is the real deal. 50 acres of rough country tucked up against the Gros Ventre Range, a dozen horses that eat more than they're worth, and 6 guest cabins that leak when it rains hard. The main house has been in my family since 1947, when my great-grandfather staked his claim here with nothing but grit and a government land grant. The place looks like it sounds. Weathered barn that leans a bit to the left, fences I'm constantly patching, and a hand-painted sign at the gate that's faded so bad you can barely read. Hayes Ranch anymore, but it's home. Or it was until my parents died 5 years. Back in an avalanche while checking the back 40 for strays. I was 24 when it happened, still trying to figure out my life. And suddenly I'm running a whole operation by myself. Didn't know a damn thing about keeping books or dealing with suppliers, and within a year I was drowning. The bank sent letters, the kind with bold red print that make your stomach drop. I was 2 weeks from losing everything when some anonymous investor swooped in, bought my note, forgave half the debt, and gave me terms I could actually survive on. Never found out who it was. Just a letter from some lawyer in Seattle saying somebody believed in what we were doing here. Conservation tourism, protecting elk roots, keeping the land wild, all that stuff my folks cared about. So I kept going, hosting trail rides, corporate retreats, the occasional wedding. It pays the bills barely, but the land stays in the family. Late September in Wyoming is something else. The aspens turn this ridiculous shade of gold that makes the whole valley look like it's glowing. The air gets sharp enough to sting your lungs, and the elk start bugling up in the high country. I was out in the round pen that Thursday evening, working with Storm, this big gray gelding I'd pulled from a nightmare situation about 6 months prior. His last owner beat the hell out of him, left him mean and skittish as a barn cat. I was trying to get him comfortable with a saddle again, moving real slow, talking low and easy, when I heard tires on the gravel. Wasn't expecting company. My weekend group, some tech executives from Denver doing team building or whatever, they weren't due till Friday night. I looked up and saw this black SUV rolling up the drive. Brand spanking new, rental plates, the kind of rig that costs more per day than I clear in a week. It parked near the house and just sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. Then the door opened. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd taken a serious wrong turn. Somewhere around Scottsdale. Tall, maybe 5'8", dark hair yanked back in a ponytail that was half falling apart, wearing these pristine hiking boots that had never touched dirt, and jeans that probably cost what I pay in property taxes. She had on this cream sweater that looked expensive and totally wrong for a ranch, but it was her face that got my attention. She looked like she'd been through a war, eyes bloodshot, makeup smudged, hands trembling as she shut the car door behind her. She spotted me by the pen and started walking over, those fancy boots sinking into the mud with every step. I wiped my hands on my jeans and met her halfway, Storm snorting and pacing behind me. "Can I help you?" I said, keeping my tone neutral because for all I knew she was another developer scouting land to pave over. She stopped a few feet away, looked me square in the eye, and hit me with the wildest thing I've ever heard. "I need a husband this weekend. My birthday's Sunday. If I'm not married by midnight, I lose everything." I just stood there like an idiot, blinking at her, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, I figured maybe she was running some kind of con or this was a prank show. But she didn't crack a smile, didn't laugh, just stood there looking at me like I was her last shot at survival. "Come again," I said. She pulled a thick folder from her bag and shoved it at me, her hands shaking so bad the papers rattled. "My name is Sloan Mercer. I'm the heir to Mercer Land Development out of Seattle. My grandfather died 6 months ago, and his will says I have to be married by my 28th birthday to inherit the company. That's this Sunday, October 1st. If I'm not married by midnight, everything goes to my cousin Preston. And trust me, he'll burn it all down." I opened the folder, half expecting some crazy manifesto, but it was legit. Legal docs, a copy of the will, newspaper clippings about Mercer Land Development. I knew the name, big real estate player, controlled thousands of acres across the West. Some of their projects butted right up against Forest Service land near here. My stomach tightened as I flipped through the pages. This wasn't a joke. "Why me?" I asked, handing it back. She took a breath, steadied herself. Because my grandfather was the one who saved your ranch 4 years ago. He was your anonymous investor. I found his journals after he passed. He wrote about this place, about your folks, about how families like yours are what the West should be. When my fiancé bailed 3 days ago, I thought about who I could trust. Someone Preston couldn't buy off. Your name kept coming up. I leaned against the fence rail, my mind spinning. So Thomas Mercer, he's the one who kept me from going under. And now you want me to marry you so your cousin doesn't do what exactly? Bulldoze everything that matters, she said. And her voice cracked just enough that I knew she meant it. Preston's got plans to buy up every ranch around here, push families out, drop luxury resorts and golf courses on migration routes. My grandfather spent 40 years protecting wild spaces, setting up conservation easements, keeping developers in check. Preston sees dollar signs and nothing else. I looked past her at the mountains, at the aspens burning gold in the late sun, at the land 3 generations of my family had sweated over. I'd watched developers gut this valley before, seen neighbors fold under pressure, seen open range turn into gated communities with names like Elk Ridge Estates. My parents fought that garbage their whole lives and died, trying to protect what was left. No money, I said finally. I don't want to pay out. And we don't lie to people. If we're doing this, we do it straight. You work this weekend like any other ranch hand, no favors, no shortcuts. And if folks ask, we tell them the truth, that this is bigger than us. She nodded so fast I thought her neck might snap. Deal? Okay. Thank you. We shook on it right there in the dirt. Her hand soft and cold against mine. And I remember thinking, what the hell did I just sign up for? That night I gave her the guest room, my baby sister's room that I'd kept the same since the avalanche. Still had her rodeo ribbons pinned to the wall. Sloane set down her suitcase and looked around like she'd landed on Mars. I cooked dinner, elk stew from a buck I'd tagged last fall, some bread from the bakery in town. She sat at the table, staring at the bowl like she'd never seen wild game before. But she ate it without complaining. We didn't say much, just hammered out logistics. Friday morning, we'd drive to the courthouse in Jackson. Get the license and the ceremony done. Be back before my guests showed up. You ever been married? She asked after a long silence. Nope, you? I was engaged until Tuesday. Blake Rothschild, corporate attorney. We had a wedding planned for this Saturday, actually. Preston offered him $2 million and a partnership to walk away. He took it. I looked at her across the table and saw the hurt she was trying to bury under all that polish. That's low, even for rich folks. Yeah, she said quietly. It really is. After we cleaned up, she turned to me, arms wrapped tight around herself. I'm not cut out for this, Garrett. I've spent my whole life in boardrooms. I don't know how to do any of this. She waved at the wood stove, the rough-cut beams, the life I lived every day. Then you'll learn as you go, I said. But you're here now, and that counts for something. We left for Jackson before sunrise the next morning, the Tetons glowing pink as the sun climbed. Sloane was quiet most of the drive, staring out at the valley. About an hour in, she finally spoke. I need to tell you something. I'm terrified of horses. Have been since I was 7 and one bit me at a petting zoo. Well, that's going to be a problem, I said. We've got a trail ride tonight with the guests. I know, I'll manage somehow. The courthouse was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, a clerk who looked like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. We filled out forms, paid the fee, stood in front of her like we were renewing our car registration. Sloane wore a simple cream dress. I had on my good jeans and the shirt I saved for weddings and funerals. Right before the vows started, I pulled my mom's wedding band from my pocket. Thin, silver thing I'd carried since she died. It's borrowed, I said, handing it to Sloane. You can give it back when we're done. Her eyes got wet, but she nodded and slipped it on. The clerk droned through the legal minimum. And when it was my turn, I added something that surprised even me. I'll keep you safe this weekend. That's a promise. She whispered, I do. I said it back. And that was it. Married. Sloane Hayes on paper. We grabbed lunch at a diner, awkward as two strangers at a bus stop, then headed back to the ranch. The corporate group was already there when we pulled in. 8 people in brand new outdoor gear standing around looking lost. I introduced Sloane as my wife, the word tasting weird in my mouth, and they all congratulated us like it was normal. That evening I had to lead a sunset ride. Sloane had to come to sell it. I put her on Willow, our gentlest mare, and she gripped that saddle horn like her life depended on it. I stayed right beside her the whole time, talking her through it. "You're doing fine. Just breathe. She can feel when you tense up." Sloane made it through without falling, but when we got back, she was shaking like a leaf. I gave her a blanket by the fire pit and told her she did good. She leaned into my shoulder, half exhausted, half playing the part, and I felt something shift between us. Then around 11, all hell broke loose. The horses started screaming bloody murder. We bolted to the barn and found the main gate wide open. 4 horses gone, Storm losing his mind in his stall. Somebody had cut the latch clean through. We spent the next 3 hours in the pitch dark trying to round them up. Finally found Willow limping on the shoulder of the highway, her front leg torn open and bleeding. Called the vet at 2 in the morning. He stitched her up while I held a flashlight, and Sloane stood there covered in mud and blood, looking like she might be sick. As the sun came up, I found a business card half buried in the dirt by the barn. Preston's Development Company. Sloane stared at it, then at me. "He's not just fighting this in court. He's trying to destroy you to get to me." I picked up the card, crushed it in my fist. "Then we better make damn sure he doesn't win." Neither of us slept that night. By the time the vet left and we got the horses settled, the sun was already creeping over the mountains, turning the valley that soft purple-gray color that comes right before full daylight. Sloane sat on the porch steps, still covered in dried mud and Willow's blood, staring at nothing. I brought her coffee, sat down next to her close enough that our shoulders touched, and we just existed there for a while without saying a word. "This is my fault," she finally said, her voice raw. "I brought this nightmare to your door. Preston's the one who cut that latch, not you, and he's gonna answer for it." The corporate guests were spooked, understandably. Over breakfast, their leader, some guy named Derek with expensive sunglasses, pulled me aside and said they were thinking about cutting the weekend short. I couldn't afford to lose the booking, but more than that, I needed them here. If Preston's investigators showed up and the place looked abandoned, it'd be easier to claim the marriage was fake. So I did what I do best. I lied through my teeth and told them it was just a faulty gate latch, that we'd fixed it, and I'd give them half off the trail rides as an apology. Derek bought it, or at least pretended to. Sloane spent the morning trying to make herself useful, which mostly meant getting in the way. She didn't know how to stack hay without it falling over, couldn't tell a halter from a bridle, and nearly got herself kicked trying to pet one of the geldings who doesn't like strangers. But she kept at it, and I'll give her credit for that. Around 10, I found her in the tack room trying to figure out how a saddle worked, turning it over in her hands like it was some kind of alien artifact. "You're gonna need to ride today," I said from the doorway. "Guests are expecting a morning trail ride, and if you're my wife, you've got to be out there with us." She set the saddle down, looked at me with those big green eyes that were equal parts terrified and determined. "I don't think I can, Garrett. Last night with Willow, that was different. It was an emergency. But this, I don't know if I can just get on a horse and act like it's normal." I walked over, picked up a bridle, and started explaining how it worked, which part goes where, how you ease the bit into their mouth without scaring them. Then I handed it to her. "Storm needs exercising. He's been cooped up since last night, and he's gonna be wound tight. You're gonna help me." Her face went pale. "Storm? The one who's been abused? The one who tried to bite you yesterday?" "Yep, that's the one." I led her out to the round pen where Storm was pacing, his gray coat dark with sweat, even though the morning was cool. She stopped at the fence, her hands gripping the rail so hard her knuckles went white. "I can't do this." "You can," I said, opening the gate. "Because fear's just a story you tell yourself. And right now, you're telling yourself the wrong one. Storm's been hurt, just like you've been hurt. He doesn't trust easy, and neither do you. But if you can get past that, you'll both be better for it." I spent the next hour working with both of them, talking to Storm in that low, steady voice I use, getting him calm enough to let me put the saddle on. Then I brought Sloane into the pen, put her hand on his neck, let her feel his breathing. He didn't spook, didn't shy away, just stood there blowing softly through his nose. After a while, I boosted her up into the saddle, and I swear I thought she was going to pass out, but she didn't. She sat there, white-knuckled and shaking, while I led Storm around the pen in slow circles. "You're doing it," I told her. "See? You're stronger than the fear." By the end of it, she was smiling, this small, fragile thing, but real. One of the corporate ladies, watching from the fence, called out that we looked adorable together, and Sloan actually laughed. It was the first time I'd heard that sound, and it did something to my chest I wasn't ready to think about. The investigator showed up just after lunch. I was fixing the latch on the barn when a black sedan rolled up, and out stepped this guy in a cheap suit with a clipboard and the kind of face that says he's seen every con in the book. Marcus Webb, he introduced himself. Licensed private investigator, hired by Preston Mercer to verify the legitimacy of the marriage. He interrogated us separately, started with me in the barn while Sloan waited in the house. How long have you known Ms. Mercer? Since Thursday. Why did you marry her? Because her grandfather saved my ranch, and I wasn't about to let his legacy get torched by some jackass cousin. Do you share a bedroom? We're working up to that. Any financial agreements? Not a damn one. Then he went after Sloan. I couldn't hear what he was asking, but I saw her through the window, sitting at the kitchen table, with her back straight and her hands folded, like she was in a deposition. When he finally left an hour later, he told us he'd be filing his report Sunday morning, and that if the marriage was fraudulent, we'd both be facing charges. After his car disappeared down the drive, Sloan came out onto the porch looking like she might throw up. He didn't believe us. He kept asking about the separate bedrooms, about how fast it happened, about whether you're getting paid. We don't look like a real couple. That's because we're not, I said. Not yet anyway. She looked at me and something passed between us, some unspoken understanding that the game had changed. We need to share a room. Move my things into yours. Make it look real. Make it look real. So that's what we did. Spent the afternoon hauling her suitcase and toiletries into my bedroom, the master that used to be my parents' room. It felt strange watching her hang her expensive blouses next to my flannels in the closet, setting her perfume, bottles on the dresser next to my grandfather's old pocket watch. She picked up a framed photo of my folks, taken the summer before they died, both of them grinning on horseback. They look happy, she said softly. They were. This place was their whole world. That evening I taught her how to make chili for the guest dinner, standing behind her at the stove, guiding her hands as she chopped onions and browned the meat. She was terrible at it, cut everything uneven, nearly burned the garlic, but she laughed when I teased her about it. The guests ate it up, literally and figuratively, kept saying how sweet we were together, and the weird part was, it didn't feel like acting anymore. After dinner, we had a bonfire. The corporate group wanted s'mores and ghost stories, the whole rustic experience. Sloan sat next to me on a log bench, close enough that I could smell her shampoo over the wood smoke. Derek asked how we met, and Sloan didn't miss a beat. His family saved mine once. Now he's saving me again, I added. She showed up and flipped my whole world upside down. Still doing it. Our eyes met in the firelight, and I felt it again. That shift. Like we were crossing some invisible line without meaning to. That's when one of the guests pointed toward the east pasture and said, "Is that smoke?" I grabbed binoculars from my truck, looked out, and felt my blood turn to ice. Grass fire spreading fast through the dry autumn brush. I yelled for everyone to grab shovels, called 911, but the fire station was 30 minutes out and the wind was pushing the flames straight toward the barn. We fought that fire like our lives depended on it. Digging fire breaks, soaking the ground, the guests working alongside us. Sloan was right there in the thick of it, dirt on her face, blisters forming on her hands, not quitting. Then the wind shifted and the fire jumped the brake, heading for the barn where the horses were screaming their heads off. I didn't think, just ran inside, the smoke so thick I could barely see. Storm was rearing in his stall, eyes rolling white. I got his gate open, tried to lead him out, but a burning beam cracked and fell, pinning my leg. The pain was instant, white-hot, and I yelled. Then Sloan was there, coughing and choking, screaming my name. She grabbed Storm's halter, her fear forgotten, and got him moving toward the door. Then she came back for me, used her whole body weight to lift that beam just enough for me to drag myself free. We stumbled out as the roof started caving in, collapsed on the grass while the fire trucks finally rolled up. The paramedics treated my burns, wrapped Sloan's blistered hands, and the fire marshal found what I already knew, accelerant residue, arson. Preston had tried to burn us out. Later that night, after the guests were settled and the fire was out, Sloan and I sat in the kitchen wrapping each other's wounds. Her hands were shaking as she spread ointment on my leg. You could have died, she whispered. For me, for some stupid inheritance. I caught her chin, made her look at me. Wasn't for the inheritance. Not anymore. Then what was it for? You, I said. It's for you. She kissed me then, hard and desperate. And I kissed her back like it was the only true thing in a world full of lies. When we pulled apart, she was crying. This is real, isn't it? Not just for the board. Yeah, I said. It's real. We fell asleep on the couch, wrapped up in each other, too exhausted for anything more than holding on. I woke up at dawn to my phone ringing. Sloane's lawyer, his voice tight. Preston filed an emergency injunction. Board meeting moved to noon today. You've got 6 hours to prove the marriage is legitimate. Sloane sat up, her hair a mess, eyes wide. What do we do? I pulled her close. We show them what we've been through. Together. 6 hours. That's all we had to pull together. A case that would convince a boardroom full of skeptics that our marriage wasn't some desperate con job. Sloane was on the phone with her lawyer before the coffee finished brewing, pacing the kitchen in my old sweatshirt and jeans, her voice sharp and focused in a way I hadn't heard before. This was her world, the high-stakes negotiating. The legal chess matches and watching her operate was something else entirely. I started gathering evidence while she talked. Printed out the fire marshal's arson report. Pulled up photos on my phone from the night we fought the fire. Me and Sloane covered in soot with the barn burning behind us. I got statements from the corporate guests who'd witnessed everything. Derek and his crew writing out affidavits about how we'd worked side by side, how real it looked, how nobody fakes that kind of partnership when their lives are on the line. The vet sent over Willow's medical records with both our names listed as owners. The courthouse emailed a certified copy of the marriage license, and I even grabbed a photo from the bonfire night where Sloane was leaning into me, laughing at something one of the guests said. It wasn't staged, wasn't for show, just a moment that happened to get caught on camera. Sloane hung up around 8, slumped into a chair at the table, and rubbed her eyes. Her hands were still bandaged from the fire, and I could see the exhaustion pulling at her. Preston's lawyers are claiming duress, that I coerced you with money or threats. They've got some investigators' report saying we barely know each other, that the timeline's suspicious, that you're just some random rancher I picked out of desperation. I sat down across from her, slid a mug of coffee her way. They can claim whatever they want. We've got the truth. She looked at me, really looked, and for a second I saw the fear underneath all that polish. What if it's not enough? What if we lose and Preston gets everything? He'll tear this valley apart, Garrett. He'll turn your ranch into a parking lot for some resort. Then we fight like hell to make sure that doesn't happen, I said. And if it does, we'll figure something out. Together. The meeting was set for noon. Video conference from the ranch office since Sloane couldn't fly to Seattle in time. We spent the morning getting ready. Her in a blazer and blouse that made her look every bit the corporate heiress. Me in the cleanest shirt I owned and a blazer I borrowed from Derek. She straightened my collar. I tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and it felt like suiting up for war. The board appeared on screen at exactly 12. A dozen faces in expensive suits sitting in some conference room in Seattle, and right there in the middle was Preston. He looked every bit the smug bastard I'd imagined. Mid-30s, slicked back hair, a smile that said he'd already won. Sloane's grandfather's chair sat empty at the head of the table, and I could see her staring at it, her jaw tight. Preston didn't waste time. This marriage is a fraud. Garrett Hayes is nobody. A struggling rancher. She found in my grandfather's old files and paid off to circumvent the will. Look at the timeline. Engaged and married within 24 hours. No prior relationship, no shared history. It's a transparent scheme, and I'm asking this board to invalidate it immediately. His lawyer started throwing up documents on the shared screen, our courthouse filing. Webb's investigator report highlighting the separate bedrooms and rapid timeline. Financial records showing the disparity between Sloane's wealth and my broke-ass ranch. The board murmured, a few of them nodding like it made sense. Then Sloane stood up, and the room went quiet. You're right about one thing, Preston. We met last Thursday. I showed up at his ranch desperate and terrified. Because you bribed my fiancé to abandon me 3 days before our wedding. But Garrett didn't help me for money. He helped me because 4 years ago, our grandfather saved his family's ranch from foreclosure. Grandpa believed in what the Hayes family stood for, Conservation over profit, integrity over greed. When I needed someone I could trust, someone you couldn't buy, I went to the person Grandpa trusted. She started pulling up photos. Me and her fighting the fire. The burned barn, Willow's injury, the guests' statements. Preston hired arsonists to burn Garrett's property. He sabotaged the horses, endangered innocent people, all to stop me from fulfilling Grandpa's wishes. And somewhere in the middle of that, something happened. We stopped pretending. This stopped being about a will or a company. It became real. I stood up next to her, cleared my throat. I didn't marry her for money, and I sure as hell didn't do it because she forced me. I did it because Preston and people like him have been destroying this valley for years, buying up family ranches and turning them into playgrounds for rich folks who don't give a damn about the land. Sloane's trying to protect what her grandfather built, and yeah, it started fast. But when you're in a burning barn pulling horses out together, you figure out real quick who someone is. Preston's face went red. This is emotional manipulation. They rehearsed this whole sob story. She's unfit to run this company. She's desperate and reckless. And he's just along for the ride, hoping for a payout down the line. His lawyer jumped in, projected a new document on the screen, some contract with my name on it showing I'd get $5 million after the board meeting. Proof, he said, that it was always a business transaction. Sloane's face drained of color. That's fake. I never signed anything like that. I never even discussed money with Garrett. The board started arguing. Half of them convinced, the other half skeptical, and I could feel it slipping away. Then Sloane's lawyer, who'd been silent this whole time, spoke up. Before you make a decision, you need to hear something. He played an audio file, the quality grainy but clear enough. Preston's voice talking to someone on the phone. Burn the Hayes place, make it look like an accident. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure it happens before Sunday. Then bank records flashed on screen. Transfers from Preston's offshore. Accounts to the two men the police had arrested for arson. Then emails, Preston to Blake. Rothschild offering $2 million and a job to break off the engagement. Preston to Marcus Webb offering a bonus to fabricate evidence against the marriage. And finally, the kicker. An email to a document forger in Portland commissioning that fake $5 million contract. The room exploded. Board members shouting over each other. Preston on his feet yelling that it was illegal surveillance, that it wouldn't hold up. Then the police walked into his frame. 2 Seattle cops with handcuffs. And Preston started backing away from the table. You can't do this. I didn't. This is a setup. The fire marshal recorded your call to the arsonists as part of the investigation, Sloane's lawyer said calmly. Everything else came from subpoenas issued this morning. You're done, Preston. They cuffed him right there on camera. Read him his rights while he screamed about injustice and conspiracies. And the feed cut as they hauled him out. The board chairman, an older guy with gray hair and a tired face, looked at Sloane through the screen. Ms. Mercer, on behalf of this board, I apologize. Your marriage is validated, your inheritance is secure, and Preston Mercer is hereby removed from all positions within this company. We'll begin proceedings to cleanse the board of anyone involved in his schemes. Sloane thanked him, her voice steady. But the second the call ended, she collapsed into my arms, shaking and crying so hard I thought she might break. I held her while she fell apart, stroking her hair, whispering that it was over, that she'd won, that we'd won. The corporate guests, who'd been watching from the doorway with permission, actually cheered. Derek clapped me on the back, said we were the toughest damn newlyweds he'd ever seen, and the whole group packed up to leave that afternoon still talking about the wildest team-building weekend of their lives. That evening, after everyone was gone and the ranch fell quiet, Sloane and I sat on the porch watching the sun drop behind the mountains. The pasture was still scorched in places. The barn needed serious repairs. But the horses were safe and the land was still ours. My lawyer says I can annul the marriage now if we want, she said quietly. No legal trouble, no complications. You'd be free. I turned to her. Is that what you want? She shook her head, eyes shining. No, I want this. I want you. But I need to know if you want me, or if I'm just some project you felt obligated to finish. I kissed her, slow and certain, pouring everything I couldn't say into it. When I pulled back, I kept my forehead against hers. I want you. Every stubborn, brave, terrified part of you. This stopped being an obligation the second you ran into a burning barn for me. She smiled, that real one I'd only seen a few times. and said she'd run Mercer remotely, restructure it around conservation, move to Wyoming full-time. We'd rebuild the barn together, expand the ranch into something her grandfather would have been proud of, and figure out the rest as we went. 3 months later, in the middle of December with snow covering everything, we got married again. For real this time. Not for a board or a will, just for us. It was small. Just a few neighbors and the guests from that crazy weekend who'd become friends. Sloan wore a simple white dress with a fur wrap and boots. I wore a tux jacket over jeans because that's about as fancy as I get. We stood under an arch we'd built from lodge pole pine, and Storm, fully recovered and gentle as a kitten now, stood nearby with wildflowers braided into his mane. Sloan rode him down the aisle, having conquered that fear completely, and when she dismounted, I was there to catch her. We wrote our own vows this time. She promised to choose me every day, to face fears together, to build something bigger than either of us alone. I promised to protect what we'd started, to love her through the fires and the quiet moments, to never let her forget how strong she was. A year later, the ranch was thriving. Mercer Land Development funded conservation easements across 3 states, Sloan on the board making damn sure her grandfather's vision lived on. We'd rebuilt the barn, started an education program for at-risk kids, and taken in 4 more rescue horses. And Sloan, 6 months pregnant and glowing, was leading a board meeting from the porch while I built a nursery in what used to be my sister's room. Preston got 5 years for arson and fraud. Wasn't enough in my book, but it'd do. One evening, we rode out together. Her on Storm, me on my buckskin, watching the sun paint the Tetons every shade of orange and gold. She looked over at me and said, "You know I only asked for a weekend, right?" "Yeah," I said, grinning, "but I'm keeping you anyway." She showed up needing a husband to save a legacy. I gave her a lifetime and got one back. Turns out sometimes the best things come from the craziest decisions. And I wouldn't change a single second of it.